Well, I'll open us up in prayer and we'll jump right in. So, Father, we just thank you again for another night. Thank you that we can be here, gather freely. I pray for, on a different note, I pray for the revivals that are happening around the U.S. and that just went through Wisconsin and Chicago, the worship. I just pray that we know your presence is there, but I pray that people will experience it, will feel it in a new way, a real tangible way, and revival will sweep across those cities that worship movement is going through. We just thank you for the faithfulness of those people that are traveling the country to sing and praise you in places where often they aren't received very well by the government and by the leadership of the cities. So we just thank you for their faithfulness, and we ask that you will just continue to move through their ministry. In Jesus' name, amen. So we get to jump into the more practical stuff now. So who's ready to talk about money? Money and why it's important. So this actually excites me. So I don't know. This might be my favorite lesson as I've kind of put them together. This one or the investing one, because I think this is, to me, it's really neat. We're going to get into budgeting a little bit, fun stuff. How we should spend our money and where it should go. And then we're going to cover a little bit about assets and liabilities and some financial stuff. So, but this is exciting to me, even though I know to some people it isn't. But so what is money? Anyone have an answer? What is money? Simple answer's good. Anything's good. So. That's true. Jesus does talk about money a lot, actually. And the Bible talks about money a lot. So that's very true. Currency. Yep. That's good. So I wanted to talk about, you stole one of mine, which is good. I wanted to talk about two parts about money that I think are important. So the first one, I want to present an idea to you. And then the second one, we're going to cover a little bit of real brief history of money, more specifically here in the U.S. So the first idea I want to propose to you is that as valuable as money is, time is your most valuable commodity. Time is your most valuable commodity. So you can always make more money, you can make less money, but you can't make any more time. So Bill Gates, even though Bill Gates or any of the richest people in the world, no matter how much money they have, they can't even buy one more second in a day. Even if they spent one more second than you have in a day. Even if they spent all their money, nobody can make more time. And the Bible talks about time too. So go figure. It's the book that helps us out in life. So I looked at two verses talking about the importance of time and our management of time. So the first was Proverbs 90, verse 12. Proverbs 90, verse 12. No, Psalm 90. A typing error again. Thanks, Dan. You said that, and I'm like, oh yeah, 31 chapters in Proverbs. That doesn't make much sense. So that was my favorite reading plan in high school, actually, is to take the date and read the Proverbs for that date, because there's 31 Proverbs. And so I did that a lot, because I was a high school boy that couldn't stay focused. So it was easy to be like, okay, here's the date. I remember what to read now. So Psalms 90, verse 12. So teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. Teach us to number our days so that we may get a heart of wisdom. So I believe that to number our days means to manage our time well. And the result of managing our time well is gaining a heart of wisdom. And then Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 through 17. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 through 17. Look carefully then how you walk, not as an unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time, because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. So verse 16 says, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. So we're called to be wise, and being wise looks like managing our time well. So why do I bring up time in relationship to money? So making money is a trade of your time for money. And I learned this lesson young. I had a different, from a lot of my friends anyway, I had a different upbringing with money. My parents, I would say it was wisdom. When I was young, they started me with an allowance like everyone else. But my allowance, I had to track it in a ledger. They didn't just hand me money. I had a book. I had to write in each week. I think I started out with, they were generous. I started out with like $3. So I got a big allowance, $3. But to get it, I had to write it in the ledger, and I had to take out 10% for tithe that they would give me they'd give me 30 cents, and I would go tithe that at church on the weekend. And then they also made me put 10% into savings. And I had to track all that every week. So if I wanted to buy something, I would go to them and I show them my ledger and tell them, okay, here was where my tithe went, my savings is up to this much, and I have this much I can go buy a toy with. So my upbringing with money was a little different, and then I started, it was a good different, I think. My dad owned an auto body shop over in Cumberland. So he was, I think, really busy one time was his main motivation. And when I was like 11 or 12, he told me, okay, I need you to come and scuff sand a car. And I'm like, well, I wasn't really sure I wanted to work yet. He's like, well, come on, you're coming. So I went and started working in the auto body shop at 11 or 12 or something. And then when I hit high school, I started working there during the summers. And back then I was making about $6.50 an hour. Dad paid me pretty well for the time, actually. I think minimum wage was like $5.25. So I thought I was rolling in the dough. Dad was paying me good. So I'd go work during the summer, and I developed this mindset relating to time. I'd like to go hang out with friends, like a lot of people in their teenage years, and often that ends up being at a restaurant, out to eat or something like that. Well, a hamburger would cost like $7 or $8 back then. So I was just stuck on the fact that a hamburger was an hour of my time. A hamburger and fries was an hour of my time. So I usually ended up ordering just a drink or a side of fries because the hamburger wasn't worth an hour of my time. So I kind of learned it young, and I think it's been a really important thing to me as I've thought about money over the years, that it really is a trade-off of time. You're trading your time for money. So it is important to manage our money by how we manage our time. So then the second part of money, this is where we get into kind of the strict definition, and we're going to get into a little history. So the Merriam-Webster's definition of money is something generally accepted as a medium of exchange, a measure of value, or a means of payment, such as officially coined or stamped metal currency. So it's a form of value and a form of exchange, an officially stamped coin or currency. So we could spend a lot of time talking about money, but the one thing that we'll come back to a little bit later, but the one thing I feel is really important in the U.S. Is understanding when we moved from a gold standard to a fiat system for currency. So I'll explain a little bit. A gold standard, simply put, means that a country's currency is backed by gold. So the value of the paper money actually holds a value of gold that the government is holding for safekeeping. So you could, back when we were at a gold standard, you could go turn in money for its value in gold, and you could get your gold. The government didn't necessarily want you to go do that all at once, but you could. So the gold-backed system, the value of our dollar, had its amount in gold that was held by the government. Well, in 1933, Roosevelt took us off the gold standard for how our currency works. So I'm going to read this quote from the History Channel. So on April 5th, 1933, Roosevelt ordered all gold coins and gold certificates in denominations of more than 100 to be turned in for other money. It required all persons to deliver all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates owned by them to the Federal Reserve by May 1st for the set price of $20.67 per ounce. By May 10th, the government had taken in 300 million of gold coin and 470 million of gold certificates. 2 months later, a joint resolution by Congress declared a gold clause in many public and private obligations that required the debtor to repay the creditor in gold dollars of the same weight and fineness as the borrower. In 1934, the government price of gold was increased to $35 per ounce, effectively increasing the gold on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet by 69%. This increase in assets allowed the Federal Reserve to further inflate the money supply. So that's kind of long, but what's important in there is that it changed the way the U.S. dollar worked. Before 1933, the U.S. dollar held a value in gold, and all of us probably understand and know that gold typically increases in value over the long term. Historically, it has certainly increased. It's now $1,900 an ounce is where gold's at. So our money before 1933 would actually increase in value because it was backed by gold. But in 1933, it was now backed by the federal government saying that it had value. So it no longer held any value attached to a precious metal or anything. It was now backed, a fiat system is backed by the government saying that this is legal tender for paying debts. So that, among many things, one big factor that brought into our money and into the equation was inflation. So I looked up $1 in 1933 would have been worth, I wrote it down so I'd remember, would have been worth about $20 today. So what that means is it would take $20 today to buy what $1 could have in 1933. So you can go to Applebee's and buy a meal for, what are they, 2 for $22 now? So that would be like $1 would buy dinner for you and another person back in 1933, and now it takes $20. So our money, if held, is now going down in value, when before it was gold-backed. So in theory, it was going up in value, depending on the value of gold. So this, we're going to get into how this affects our financial decisions a little later. But that's a little important history fact I wanted to start out with. And then we are going to talk about why that changes what we need to do with our money in a little bit. But I wanted to kind of jump right into some budgeting basics. So if you're okay with that, we're going to dive right in. The first idea I want to talk about comes from one of my favorite financial writers, Robert Kiyosaki. And he tells this idea, he calls it pay yourself first. He's real big on this idea. He says pay yourself first. And that means, and this is, I believe he's a Christian. He's not incredibly outspoken, but this is coming right from his book. So what pay yourself first means is you put 10% of your income into giving, 10% into savings, and 10% into investing. So we're going to break those down. So 10% into giving. So what I find really interesting is that Robert Kiyosaki and actually a lot of financial advisors, even non-Christians, they all stress the importance of giving to charity. Even if they don't believe, they don't know why it works. They obviously have realized that giving, like we've talked about before, those that give will receive. They've seen the principle in action, but none of them ever talk about why it works. It's interesting reading some of the non-Christians' books about giving. They just say, they'll try to talk about, and it's rightly so, that the generous heart makes you more likable to people, and then you'll receive more. And all those are true, but we know the real principle comes from God, that those that give will receive. So I find that really interesting. So 10% into giving. And why I believe 10% is important is from the Old Testament tithe. So without going into tons of depth of why I think the tithe is relevant for today, I just wanted to jump into one passage. So we're going to jump into Malachi 3, 7 through 12. Malachi 3, 7 through 12. We've heard parts of this quite a bit. So From the days of your fathers, you have turned aside from my statutes and have not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you, says the Lord of hosts. But you say, how shall we return? Will man rob God? Yet you are robbing me. But you say, how have we robbed you? In your tithes and contributions. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation of you. Bring the full tithe into the storehouse. And we've talked about this next part before. That there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open the windows of heaven for you, and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need, I will rebuke the devourer for you, so that it will not destroy the fruits of your soil, and your vine in the field shall not fail to bear, says the Lord of hosts. Then all nations will call you blessed, for you will be a land of delight, says the Lord of hosts. So what's going on in this passage? So in this passage, the Israelites are not following God like they have many times up to this point. They were captives of the Persian Empire. So Nehemiah is the prophet here, and he had been shown favor by the Persian Empire and was allowed to rebuild the temple. So the Israelites were back living in Jerusalem, but they were bitter. They were not following God's command to tithe. So they were starting on the right path, but they weren't quite there yet. So when Nehemiah was prophesying to them and instructing them, God was instructing through Nehemiah the importance of bringing the tithe back into the storehouse. And when that happens, he was going to pour out blessings, like we've talked about before, on the nation. And I want those things, those truths from tithing to be true in my life. So I'd like those things. But I like the end here, because it's not necessarily about blessing the nation of Israel. It wasn't necessarily about each individual having a lot of money and being able to buy what they wanted. He was blessing the nation. What it says at the end, for your land will be a land of delight, says the Lord of hosts. Then the nations will call you blessed. So it's supposed to be a testimony of God's goodness to other nations. So when they looked at Israel that followed God and loved God, they saw how good God was through the blessings they had with their crops, through the blessings they had with lack of poverty. So it was really kind of a neat thing that God was telling them was going to happen if they would be faithful. And Jesus came to fulfill the law, right? So we don't question the 10 Commandments, right? We don't say, okay, Jesus came and died on the cross, so I guess that one about murder, that's Old Testament. We probably don't need to worry about that one. You know, the adultery one, we don't question that one. Oh, Jesus died on the cross, so that adultery one, that's probably not for today. So, but we do question, a lot of times, the tithe, the idea of the tithe gets questioned in the church quite a bit as an Old Testament practice that we don't necessarily need today. But I think that's just bad logic in my mind. If we're the 10 Commandments, if you start using that logic, what else are we going to throw out? You know what I mean? So we can't just throw out everything in the Old Testament because Jesus died and made a new covenant. He came to fulfill the law, not to entirely abolish it. So he came to help us live a life by faith, not a life of acts of service by following a law. But there's still good principles to follow. So that was real quick, but that's kind of just a little snippet of why I believe 10%, the tithe, is a good principle to follow today still. So 10% into savings, the next of the three things about paying yourself first. So your 10% into savings, this is the rainy day fund. This is what you're putting away each week, each month, so that if your car breaks down and you got to go get a new transmission in your car, you've got a savings account there, so it doesn't have to strap you financially. It's if your furnace goes out in the house, you have money to fix it. If you lose your job, you have money to live on for a while until you find a new one. That's what this 10% into savings is talking about. And this may seem like a big goal, but a common target in this area of having an emergency fund, fund is having 6 months of your expenses saved up as an emergency fund. 6 months of your expenses saved up as an emergency fund. So then if anything really bad happens, that gives you a nice amount of time to search for a new job. So it takes work to get there, so that's why it's a goal, it's a target. But having a savings, an emergency savings is really something that will bring peace into our lives. And then 10% into investing. So if all your money is going out, you'll never be able to build wealth. So if we've allotted we look at our income and we've allotted all our income to other expense areas, to buying this or buying that, and we're never setting anything aside to try to grow it and to try to build, we'll never be able to attain wealth. So it's taking money and putting it into something that will generate income for you or increase in value. 10% into investing is about building an asset. Initially, it can be put into a savings account. We're going to talk a little bit about savings accounts soon. Initially, it can put into a savings account as you let it build or until you see an opportunity as something you want to invest in, which we'll have a whole week on investing. So that should be fun. So that covers the idea of paying yourself first. Paying yourself first really boils down to focus. It's just keeping mental focus on what's really important when it comes to where our money is going. That we want to be giving, we want to be saving, and we want to be investing. And all those wise decisions will help us in the future when an emergency expense comes up. It'll be peaceful. You won't necessarily like paying $2,000 for the transmission, but the money will be there, so you don't have to take on stress, even though you're not all that happy with the expense. The stress can be gone, and then it can just be like, man, my transmission went out. I didn't want to spend that money. Or investing, you can be building something that will start putting money into your pocket. So what would a model, let's have some numbers. Is that okay? What would a model budget look like? So we're going to talk about some percentages here. So I want to preface it a little bit that when I'm putting percentages, there's going to be some ranges here that we're all going to have to adjust a little bit to our individual situation. So I have 4 kids. So my food budget is going to be probably much higher than Sarah's food budget. So just there's some individual things that you're going to need to tweak here. So just know that. But we're going to talk about, I'm going to write them on the board even. I found, Brandon told me that this whiteboard is older than he is. Is that true, Pastor Bob? So he's like, I remember that whiteboard from when I was in kids' church. I'm like, okay, that's a cool fact, Brandon. So thank you. But I'm going to write down some percentages here. So we wanted to start with that idea of paying ourselves first. So tithing should come first. And we're going to put that at 10% right now. So tithing, 10%. And it's a little interesting idea here for tithing. So I'm going to pause for a moment. So I believe that tithing, this is going to be some of my personal beliefs. So go to Scripture and find where your beliefs lie. But I'm going to tell you what I believe. So Proverbs 3:9 says to bring the first fruits to the Lord. Bring your first fruits to the Lord. So I believe, and personally the way we budget, we tithe off of our gross income. So we tithe off of everything that comes in. We tithe 10%. So this number is off I'm just going to put a G here, because I do that 10% off the gross income. The rest of the numbers are all going to be off your net income, so after you pay your taxes. The rest of the budget numbers will be off what's coming in on your paycheck after everything else is taken out, after the government grabs their little bit. So savings. I'm a slow writer, so sorry. Savings, 10% like we talked about. Investing, 10%. Now, housing. So housing as a category, this would cover your mortgage or your rent. If you do own a home, you'd want to factor in a little bit for home repairs. Maybe try to figure out what, depending the condition of your home, what it's going to take on like an average yearly basis. try to put some of that into your housing budget expense percentage. And typically, that would be about 25% of your income. And again, these are kind of round numbers, so we're going to always tweak this to our own stuff. Insurance. If I spell it wrong, feel free to correct me. So I'm going too fast. But so insurance would include your health insurance, auto insurance, any life insurance that you might have, any kind of the insurances that you might have out there, business insurance, if you're kind of grouping that all into your personal finances. Otherwise, like our business insurance is all in a separate business category. But so insurance has a bigger range here. So insurance can end up being like in the 10 to 20% range. Food, mine would not fall into these percentages. So I would be an outlier when it comes to this category. So I think we've tried to budget. Our kids are starting to eat a lot. We're spending $800 a month on food. I can't believe how much our boys are starting to eat. I think my oldest had 3 bowls of cereal. I know. I remember how much I ate. Mom told me when I moved out, their food budget or their food spending went down like $300 a month. Back when I was in high school and food prices. So, yeah. They said my brother didn't eat as much as I did. They said they noticed a huge difference when I moved out, and then Gary. But yeah, so my food budget is really high, but a typical food budget would fall into 10 to 15%. Transportation. I should have just abbreviated that. That's a long one. 10 to 15%. And you can get more detailed. I had a friend that was an engineer, and he had all this in an Excel spreadsheet, but he wanted way more detail than this. So like he split out like his fixed housing costs of his mortgage and stuff like his mortgage, and then he had a different category for home maintenance. So you're always welcome to kind of adjust that depending how detailed you want it to be. So same with transportation, that would include like your car payment, your gas, and vehicle maintenance. So because our insurance is up here in that category. And then utilities. I'll just abbreviate now. I'm going to get smarter as I go along. 5 to 10%. Fun. This is the category I like. So it is important to have fun in life, right? So fun would get a 5 to 10% budget, which is exciting to me because I like to go. I like downhill skiing, and my hobbies cost money, so I like when I get to the fun category. So that could include, some people will put like their dining out as a fun item. Some people do like to put it in their food budget. I don't know what's really right or wrong. That's kind of personal preference. So fun, clothing, because nobody wants to see me walking around. Well, we won't go there. Clothing would be 5%. I'm running out of room. And then personal. So the personal could be kind of broad. It could be like personal development if you like reading books, learning about a topic or something. It could be, a lot of people put like hygiene products or something into a personal area because it doesn't really fit in any of the other ones. So personal is a little broad, but personal would be in the 5 to 10% range. 5 to 10%. There we go. There, we made it through my handwriting. Can you read my handwriting? Okay, good. My wife says it's like a doctor's handwriting. And I'm like, I've seen my doctor's notes, and I think that's way better. So this includes some ranges, but this would just kind of be a basic snapshot of what a healthy budget would look like. It doesn't equal 100. That's correct. So you would need to, Did I do my math wrong? 30. I'm at 105? Oh, man, on the low end. Well, where did I mess up my math? There goes the fun, yeah. Oh, man. That's a good question. In insurance, I don't know, 10 could be a little high. I did mess up my math in there somewhere. So, personal, I don't have a good answer for that. We're spending more than we make here, so which is something we're going to talk about soon, not spending more than you make. Yeah, this is the American budget. Adds up to 105%. So I guess my answer to that would be maybe once you start putting in more of your personal numbers. I pulled this up online from Investopedia. So I just copied their numbers, and I didn't catch that it was 105%. So I think as we start filling it in, some people, food at 10% seemed a little high, but I guess that depends. So, yeah, 10% of what? So these are kind of, if your income is lower, you're going to have to be tighter. And if your income is bigger, you got a little more wiggle room. So I will have to rework that. Thank you for pointing that out. I will write that in my notes that I need to make it add up to 100%. Yeah, whoops. Yeah, I thought I added it up too. I must not know how to do math. But so yeah. Yeah. Start figuring it out. So Dave Ramsey's got an app. We haven't used Dave Ramsey's app of Every Dollar Counts, but there's another one that we've used called Envelopes, an M-O-P. We liked that one, but towards the end, why we switched away from it, it kept crashing. So I don't know if they fixed that in the app, but we used it for like 2 years, and then it just was always losing the data, so you had to resync it and put everything in again. It was a really nice app, because the nice thing about Envelopes as an app, if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey's system of cash, he actually has you physically put cash in an envelope labeled, housing. And you put it in there, and then you pay your housing expenses out of that envelope. So that way when the envelope's empty, you're like, oh, don't have any more money. So Envelopes, the app, function that way digitally. So you'd actually fund each envelope monthly or weekly whenever your income came in. Yeah. So you would, I think Envelopes started off of Dave Ramsey from what I understand, but he didn't have his own app out yet. So Envelopes was developed to address digitally his envelope system before he had an app, is what I understand about it. And then we switched to now, because it syncs really well, Mint, which is by Intuit, which is going to be more, it functions more like accounting, like QuickBooks does. Like you set your budget and then you're subtracting. I had, Tammy, and those of you that have done bookkeeping, I had a miserable time understanding envelopes. Because I was so used to, when it came to budgeting, you set how much you're going to spend in that month, and then you subtract from it as you spend, and you're out when you're at zero. So envelopes, just the way, or you set it, and then you're tracking your expenses as you add up to it. Sorry, I'm saying this backwards. So you say you set a budget for food at $300. The way I was used to it, kind of on the accounting side, you spent $20, you put that in. You spent $30 on the next grocery bill, well, you're up to $50. And you're adding your way up to your budgeted amount. But envelopes, every time you spend, it's subtracting. I don't know, to me it was just, I couldn't get it. Carissa had to do envelopes for us. So, because I'm like, Carissa, I can't. It's every dollar counts. Dollar counts. Every dollar. Okay. Every dollar. So they're kind of up here. How well does that sync with like your online banking?
You can, if you pay for the
Okay, because Mint, what I,
membership or whatever,
yeah,
you can sync it to your bank account, and I might even like do it because I
what,
have to go in and like when I get gas, I have to
yeah,
go in and
punch it in.
punch it
What
in.
I do like about Mint is it's free and it syncs with your bank account. So, and you can split it up into as many, it doesn't limit you as a free version. You can split it into tons of categories. Like envelopes had a free version, but they limited the amount of envelopes you could have. So you'd have to, if you didn't want to pay, like we didn't pay, then you had to like put 3 things into one envelope that you really would have liked to be 3 envelopes. So we're really liking Mint so far. So just free, and it syncs really well. It's been very reliable. So, but you can play with apps, find out what works for you best personally. If you want to go the app route, I have my one friend that he won't go to apps. He wants his Excel spreadsheet. He's a civil engineer, so he wants his spreadsheet. He's got it all in there. It's all set to automatically calculate and everything. So, yeah, go ahead.
I don't do apps a whole lot. So when it syncs to your bank account,
Yeah.
when I go to the gas station, does that automatically go into my transportation?
If you use your debit card, Mint learns, you got to start, so it'll go in, you'll see every transaction you have. It'll come up in your app and you'll click, say, Quick Trip for $30. And you'll designate that as gas. And as you start assigning things, like what it is, Mint starts to learn. So the next time your bill comes, it syncs and it has Quick Trip on there, it'll categorize that as gas, and then you approve it. So you just go down and you just check a button like, yep, that Quick Trip was gas.
Okay, let's say I'm going to Quick Trip. And most likely if I'm at Quick Trip, I'm going to also pick up my butter, my milk, my bread.
Yep.
I mean, so
In Mint, you can click on it and then you can split the transaction. Yeah, so you can say, okay, I went to Quick Trip, $25 was gas and $5 was my milk and butter and stuff. So, yeah. I'm really liking how well it syncs and then it does kind of learn. It's sped up. Carissa does we have 4 kids and I work, so Carissa manages our Mint account, so credit to Carissa. So. But it is kind of self-learning well, and it's saving a lot of time as it's kind of learning some of our regular things. All you have to do is click a button and it puts it in. So it's been really simple. So play with them, but I like that it's free and that it's working well. So that makes it my personal favorite. But yeah, now I lost where I'm at in my notes. Savings. Yeah. Yeah, especially in your. That's hard when you're like a real estate agent and it's commissions based. So you'll have a super good month, and then January may not be so good. So, yep. Yeah. Yeah. I learned this from a pastor at a church I interviewed at, and I thought this was really, really a neat principle. They as a church, their current budget was done off of last year's actual giving. So they were never projecting. So I've always had a fixed income, so I haven't really had to play with that. But that might not be a bad way in the case of fluctuating income to take last year's actual income, divide it out over 12 months. Because as long as theoretically you think you'll hit about the same income or more, that wouldn't be a bad way to set your budget. So, because then you're budgeting conservatively. Because if we make more money, I think we all know it's not too hard to find. That was his theory as a church. He's like, if more money comes in, it's never a problem to find a ministry to give more money to. So, but as far as being conservative, so personally we could apply the same principle.
So where do you recommend putting that into?
Personally, I would put it into the extra income. I would put it into investing personally. But you could fill it into, maybe there's an area that you've got a bunch of kids. Maybe you need to up your clothing budget and your food budget or something. As the extra income's coming, you can be like, hey, I want my kids to actually have jeans that don't have holes in them. Oh man, my boys put holes in jeans. It's like, we just bought Micaiah one time socks too. We bought him like jeans and socks. So they're slippery. So he puts them on. First thing he does is runs across the house, slides on his feet, and then he's got to try out his jeans next. Like, that's why we buy so many jeans. So I think some of my money could probably be burned up in jeans if there was extra income. But,
Fluctuating income, sometimes it makes sense to create a separate savings account. Like if you need,
yeah,
like in your good months, you know that you're not going to have enough to cover your expenses in your lean months. To set aside like an account,
yeah.
where you can just pile that money,
I would want to be putting,
reach what you need.
on that idea with fluctuating income, I would want to make sure my savings was up to that 6 months. So I would first probably be building into this one to get the savings up to 6 months in case something did happen, 6 months of expenses. Then once you would hit that, then I think I would start funneling it into investing or, maybe clothing or,
But let's say on a good month, on a short of a month, they get $10,000 a month.
yep,
On a not so good month of the year, it's 1,500.
yep.
What would happen, you averaged it all out, like you said, for 12 months. What if you took all of your money, whatever you made, and you stuck it into one account, but you were only allowed to draw out the average of the 12 months?
Oh,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
So every time I would be, no matter how much I made, if it was a really good month or a not so good month, have to
yeah.
drop it into that account, but I can only take out 1/12 of it.
I don't know if, do any banks do that? I think you'd have to kind of monitor that personally. Like, yeah. But that's not a bad idea either, just to have it into an account. When you have a really good month, it goes into a savings account. And then you pull out from that savings, you put into your checking for kind of what you're, yeah. That would be, I think that's a really good idea. I've never had to deal with a fluctuating income like that. So these are principles I haven't necessarily had to play with. So I've always had a pretty much fixed income. So any more questions on the budget now that we figured out that I can't do math? Because those were good. I like talking through this stuff. So I hope if you have questions, please. Yes.
So, I personally struggle with the budget, but as a younger gal, wanting to get her finances straightened, what would be like? My dad always says that saving is like making sure that you're saving is like you have a good emergency fund
Yep.
and stuff. Like you're saying 6 months, and he's always saying that it's so good. But as a younger person, it's always hard for us with like food and
Yep.
clothing, like in particular.
Yeah.
So it's hard, like for me, like I guess, I don't know, like just advice period on like settling my budget, like.
Well, I know when I was young, we wanted to, so we'll say it's, my friends ate out. You end up eating out a lot, which gets expensive, which really should be in, probably like as a young person, should be in your fun category, more so than, because it's not practical to eat out every meal. No, it's not going to help you maintain a budget. So as a young person, I would watch the fun category with the eating out. Because what I noticed when I was young, that I burned up, in college, we burned up tons of money just, because what would you do? I wasn't a drinker or partier, so I wasn't going to the bars, so we'd end up at Applebee's for half-price appetizers 3 times a week or something. You know what I mean? It's just, they were the hangout spots. So I would be careful. I would definitely, if you're working on budgeting and you want to track a few items just to make a difference, I would track real close to your fun category. And be putting the eating out budget in that fun category so you can see, every month I'm going over budget, and it's because I'm eating out 15 times with my friends. Which is kind of real, for me was realistic as a young person anyway. I mean, it was 10, 15 times a month. I'd be going somewhere, and that gets really expensive. So, I mean, you could probably have your full food budget for the month. If you go to Aldi, be like $100, right? And you go out to eat for 10, 15 times. There you just spend 100 and, even if you're trying to be careful and you can get a meal for $10, which is hard to do anymore, it's like $15 by the time you tip. So I mean, you can easily rack up. Does that answer the question well at all? Because I would definitely you definitely want to fund your savings. And I would, as a young person, it's really good to start an investing account because of compounding interest. So we'll cover that in the investment week, but have you heard of compounding interest? So, okay, compounding interest, we'll hit that in investing, but basically, let's do really simple numbers. So say you put $10 in and you can double it in the first year, which is unrealistic, but it's going to make the principal a little easier. So you make $5 in that first year, or you double it, so you're at $20 because you doubled your money. So that next year you can double it again, your $20 doubles to $40. And if you can keep it doubling, the curve, your growth curve starts going like this. You go from 10 to 20 to 20 to 40, 40 to 80, 80 to 160. So because your money, you're not taking anything out, if you can keep a regular return happening, your money keeps growing. So eventually you're making, say, a more realistic number would be like 8% a year in an investment account. 8% on $10,000 is a lot more than 8% on $100.
Yeah, you want to see crazy numbers. If they say, like, if you start at age 18 and you save just $100 a month or something,
Yeah.
it's a small number, and you do that for the first 10 years or something,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
it just multiplies by the time you retire. You have like a $2 million retirement plan right there.
I think the way it works, if you can put $30,000 in between 18 and 25 and you just stop, you're better than a person that starts at 25 and puts in like 150 over the rest of their life. It was something like that. My numbers might be off, but because of compounding interest, time is a huge factor. So as a young person, I'd be trying to invest. And we're going to talk about investing, so I wouldn't invest until we talk more about investing. Don't just start throwing money at investments yet. Any more questions on kind of the budget idea? Those were good, so thank you. Thank you for questions. So hopefully my answers were okay. But, next I want to move into an idea a little bit different, but about money. We're talking about money. That was kind of a silly statement. You can add that to the blooper reel, Dan. So. Dan's been picking on me. The whole men's group is picking on me that they're going to watch through the videos and they're going to make a blooper reel come the end of the class and put all my bloopers together. So there's one for the blooper reel. So I want to talk about cash flow because I think it's important to pay attention to where our money comes from and where it goes. So I'm going to be drawing some pictures here. So we're going to talk about cash flow here for a little bit and assets and liabilities. So I'm going to draw a fun little picture first. So we have income, an income category, an expense category. That's a terrible E. And then we're just going to have some pictures here, and I'll explain this in a minute. Then we have assets and liabilities. IES. Whoops, that's it. IES. There we go. We'll get all the letters in there. So what do we have going on here? So I'm going to go through some definitions first. So an asset, I'm going to define a little bit differently than maybe how your banker would if you go in for a mortgage or if you go in for a car loan or something and your banker's walking through assets with you. And with your banker, he asks you like, well, how much are your cars worth? How much is your home worth? How much jewelry do you own? You start listing stuff like that as assets. They have value, and in that regard, they're an asset. But what I believe from my reading and what I've seen in my life, a true asset puts money in your pocket. It doesn't necessarily just have value. The real benefit from an asset a beneficial asset is one that puts money in your pocket. I'm going to start drawing some arrows, and I'll start explaining these as we go along. So it puts money from the asset will go into your income. It's putting money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. We're keeping things super simple here. I know it's not all that complicated. So an asset puts money into your pockets. A liability takes money out of your pockets. So a liability would flow here to your expense category. So some ideas of an asset could be interest. I'm just going to put INT for interest. So interest from like a kind of a nice savings account or money market account or some kind of a bond that generates interest. So every month the money you put into that is staying there, holding its value that way, and is putting money, it's making money. So you may be reinvesting it. But or real estate could be an asset. So like rental properties, which is one that I like. So, that would put money into your pockets every month. It can if you pick it well, which we'll talk about in investing. Otherwise, stocks, S-T-O-C-K-S, there we go. I'm talking and trying to spell, and it doesn't work well. But stocks, the stock market is tricky. So I'm going to be a little hesitant I want to hit this one more in the investment week. But we're going to put it in the asset category. But you can make a lot of money or lose a lot of money on stocks. So that's one that it is an asset, and we'll talk about it more in depth of how you can turn stock investments into an asset by managing risk. And liabilities, I'm going to put a controversial one up here. So your home. Some people don't like that one. And why would I put home in the liability category? Any ideas? Because what we're told quite often is, right? How many have been told this, that your home is most people's biggest investment? It's their largest asset. Well, why would I put it over in this category when we're told it's our largest asset? Because your home never puts money in your pocket. All it does, in the end, some people argue that you sell it and you make money. But then you got to go buy something else to have a place to live. So basically, the principle of why your home is a liability is it costs money to live. Unless you want to go out in the woods and stay in your tent, when it's 20 below, then your living expenses could be quite low. So you'd make money off your house. But if you actually want to have a roof over your head, a warm place to stay, it costs money. So your home has maintenance expenses. Renting is an expense. Sometimes, I'm going to say no. It's not necessarily better to rent, but it can be. Because with renting, for a period of time, your housing cost is fixed. You never have those surprise furnaces going out. So there can be some times where it is definitely advantageous to rent. There's other times in life where it's advantageous to own a home because you are paying down a mortgage, so you are increasing value that you hold. But I put it in the liability category because you have your taxes. You own a home, your home's paid off, and the government still takes money from your property taxes every year. So that home, even if it's 100% paid off, still costs you money on an annual basis. Just because our government thinks, anyway, I won't. I shouldn't go there. I won't share too many opinions on that. Obviously, a mortgage on a home would be a liability. So, any questions on why a home would be a liability? And you can disagree with me on that. That's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. But it's you can't retire even if your home's paid off, you don't have that mortgage, but you still need, say you go to retirement, you still need income to pay for things relating to your home. So come retirement age, your home, which you were told was your largest asset, you start taking your Social Security, your pension, you have to be spending that money on your property taxes, on home maintenance. So it's still costing you money even after the mortgage is paid off and you own the home 100%. It can be an asset for your heirs, yes, because they would probably sell it and take the money. If they move in, then it's their liability.
So what about when people say they're, I don't know, maybe they have 2 homes?
Yep.
Or they have a really expensive home, and when they retire, they sell it, buy a smaller home, pay it off, and put that money in the bank.
Yeah.
It becomes an asset at that point.
Then the money is an asset. So the profit that was made then becomes an asset because you can invest that or do things with it. So you can make money off your home, and depending how you handle that money afterwards, you can turn that money into an asset. But I think while you're living in the home and it's costing you money, even if it's paid off. Robert Kiyosaki, that's one of his most controversial things he talks about. And he gets called on financial TV shows all the time to talk about the controversy of why he calls a home a liability. So he goes, his books are phenomenal. He's got a bunch of them. The first one, they kind of go in a series. So you want to start with his first one, which is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he talks a lot about why your home is a liability. So, yeah. Yeah, that's a controversial one. Another liability would be like a car payment. Car payment. So liability, I don't think we need to go down with a huge list, do we? So the goal to move, I'm gonna draw a couple more arrows. So Robert Kiyosaki, he talks about the cash flow of someone that's like middle class. He calls it the rat race. That's the idea. It's the paycheck to paycheck. You gotta get your money, make your money to pay your bills. And then you need the next month, you need to make your money to pay your bills. And you just keep going around in that rat race of making money to pay your bills, making money to pay your bills. So the cash flow of someone stuck like in the middle class or stuck in the rat race would be typically income from a job. It could be self-employed or as an employee. So the money comes in to your income category, and then it goes out of your expense category. And that's being stuck in the rat race, because you go to your job, you work 40 hours a week, you work 60 hours a week, the money comes in, and it all goes right out the expense category. So a wealthy person, and to move from that rat race to wealthy, some of your income needs to be coming from the income category and being put down into the asset category that then is going to be putting income back in. And eventually, you want a better circle coming with your income coming from your asset category. That's what's going to lead towards financial freedom. When you can start growing your asset category, so you have different things, bonds that pay money. My grandpa was really wise with investing in stocks. He's 98 now. He retired at 62, so he's lived, or did he retire at 64? He's lived 35, 36 years off his investment income. So, and for the most part, he doesn't touch the principal balance. He's paying all his monthly expenses off the interest from his, he likes buying his investment strategy, which we'll talk about in the vesting class. He likes buying a really good company. So he would buy like General Electric that then paid a nice dividend on their stock, and he would just hold it for years. And he would collect that interest from the stock purchase, that dividend that they paid out. So as you can build your different investment, the goal is to build your investment so you have more money coming from the asset category funding your income. So that way your job becomes less necessary. So, and shrinking your liability category, feeding the expenses can help too. What other notes did I hear? I think I covered it all. It's kind of hard being away from my notes. But any questions on my little picture here? I think it's easier to answer questions sometimes than try to rattle through a ton of data. So we got this little guy up here, which kind of leads us into, I think it's important to talk about where our cash is, where our money, where our cash is coming from. So this is another idea from Robert Kiyosaki, and he wrote a whole book on it, and it's called the cash flow quadrant. I brought 2 markers just for this reason. I was thinking ahead. So, oh, that one's nice. So he calls it the cash flow quadrant. So this is a way of looking at where your money is coming from. So he puts up here in the left-hand corner, he puts E for an employee. So the employee category, your money comes from, you work at your job for whatever your hourly rate is or your salary, and your money comes from there. So that would be kind of this idea. Your money is flowing from your job into your income category. And then you pay your expenses and hopefully are being wise and funding your asset. The next category down here is self-employed. So self-employed is nice because you got a ton of freedom. You can set your own schedule. It comes with stresses because you're also responsible for bringing the income in. But in a way, and I don't mean this in a bad way, and neither does Robert when he talks about it, self-employed, you're just owning a job. Because if you don't work, money doesn't come in. So you have a lot of freedoms that are wonderful. I've been self-employed for quite a while. My wife says I've never had a real job, so she picks on me. So well, that's what I thought. I'm like, bus driving's a real job, but she said it wasn't a real job because nobody told me what to do. As long as my only requirements were that I got to the school on time and that I got the kids home. So she's like, that's not a real job because I could show up as early as I wanted or as, just in enough time to make it up to the school. But I'm like, that's a real job. Come on. But it's a real job. Thank you. But yeah. Well, I know the screaming. That was a real job. So I've had one real job. I worked for different contractors and stuff, but she says because I enjoyed it, it wasn't a real job. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't know. But she likes to pick on me. She's all just saying it out of good fun. So Carissa. And what she's learned about me, and she said one of the reasons she likes me is because I like being picked on. So I don't mind. I enjoy being picked on and picking on people. So I tell people if I can't pick on you, we might not be good friends. So sorry. Dan has found that out. So. I pick on all the guys in men's group. Yeah, I pick on Jeff too. So I give everyone a hard time. So the next category would be a business owner. So the difference from moving from a self-employed to a business owner, you start generating income that comes in whether you work or not. You've developed whatever product you're selling or whatever service you're providing. You have employees that are doing that. So you're paying your employees and making a little extra on top of what you're paying would be the goal. So a business, as you grow it, can become an asset. I'm just going to put bus. That doesn't mean bus driving. Bus driving is not an asset unless you own the bus company. So a business is a wonderful thing to grow because as it starts producing income that you don't work for, you can move it into your asset category because your business is then putting money into your income category. And then the last cash flow quadrant is investing. So a good investment will either increase in value, so you can sell it and use that money to live on or buy things, or it will generate interest income. And so then again, it would be, so say you have real estate that has a monthly cash flow. That would be an investment because it's, as long as you've picked the property well and you've got your rents good and you've managed your expenses, it's putting money into your pocket with minimal or no work. So an investment should have minimal to no work to put money in your pocket. Same with the idea of a business being an asset. The work should be minimal or none to really be an asset. Because if you're working really hard at your business, you're kind of moving back into the self-employed category, where if you don't put in the hours, you don't put in the work, the income doesn't come in. So there can kind of be a little crossover and kind of a fine line. So the cash flow quadrant, to gain financial freedom, as we've been kind of talking about prosperity, which ultimately would be freedom of our time, freedom to do things more ministry if we want to, freedom to spend more time with family, gaining financial freedom from prosperity, would be gained by either increasing, just put an up arrow for increasing your investment category from the cash flow quadrant, or your business, if you can grow a business. So, any questions on the cash flow quadrant idea? One really fun one here that, Sarah, you're a young person that probably does well with technology. Have you ever looked into, because it would fall as an asset once you get it on there, the money that YouTubers can make?
They can. I've never looked into it, but my
Oh,
friends tell me that they make a lot.
yes. So initially, you have work, because you got to make the video, you got to get it on there. But then once that video is up there and generating ad revenue, that would be an asset, because it's putting, just from being on the website, it's putting money into your income category. So well, for a while I had a YouTube channel that I was making $350 a year off of. Yeah, because I would film some friends of mine and I. We liked his dad had a farm, so we would buy a junk car for $150, and we'd take it out to the farm. We'd get a few of them, and we'd race them through the woods and make videos. And then I had a diesel truck, and I don't know what it was about diesel trucks and YouTube, but people would actually come and just, because diesels start hard in the cold. So I posted one video of me just starting my truck when it was 15 below, and it was up to like 70,000 views. And all it was me walking around as I started my truck in the cold and doing an outside walk around. But because I'm not that good with technology, so I had that, what did I have, like 500,000 total views on my videos? So I was starting to make some money off of it, and it was taking off, but me being a technologically incompetent, I had started that YouTube channel with my Yahoo email account, and then I opened up a Gmail account. So every time I went to YouTube, it would automatically log into my Gmail account. So I figured, it's like, okay, I'm just going to delete, because technology didn't click with me, I'm just going to delete my Gmail YouTube account. I don't know how they linked, but somehow I had linked my YouTube account that was making me money with my Gmail account. I don't remember. So I deleted all my videos. Yeah. And there went my $350 a year income. I reposted them, but they didn't catch on. I don't know. I just missed that window of them gaining popularity. So there went my asset.
So we could help the church with more income by watching the YouTube videos.
I think the church would make the ad revenue. It's hard to make money on YouTube now, because back when I started, all you had to do was apply to be an ad partner, and it didn't matter how many views you had on your video. But now you have to have a minimum total amount of views to apply to be an ad partner.
My brothers looked into this, but
So.
they said that you have to have at least $1 million before you can start a cash flow.
Is it that now? Is it $1 million?
Yep.
Because I did get my new channel to be part of the ad partner program.
Got halfway there.
So.
But yeah, they said
Yeah.
you have to have at least that.
I think it's views.
Oh, maybe
There's a view.
maybe you're right. Maybe it's views, not followers.
There's a view threshold now. Because my one video, I made a video of how to change a headlight bulb in a Volkswagen Beetle. Because we didn't have kids, and I was bored, and I had extra time. So I think that has, last I checked, it has like 370,000 views.
Maybe it's
So,
views, so that would make sense.
because there is a view threshold. I don't know what it is anymore, but
But you can start you start lower, and then if you keep getting more and more views, and it's just.
yeah. But the young people have so many, those that know how to work technology better than me, who deletes all my videos. They have wonderful possibilities of, you never know. Your stuff might just catch on. So the most viewed YouTuber is Ryan's Toys Review. So Ryan's Toys Review. We don't let our kids watch it either, but it's a mom that just started filming her son opening toys. And then he was like, I don't know, 4 when they started or something. He would just talk about it. He'd give his 4-year-old review of the toy. He's now, Oh, now he gets free toys sent to him because he's got toys in Walmart now. He's got his face on a toy box in Walmart. So it's yeah. I think he's on Amazon now too. But it's crazy what we'll catch on YouTube. So for young people that may listen to this, put your idea on YouTube and maybe it'll take off. One dad, we actually let our kids watch the Axel show. It's actually a really nice dad that likes to take his kid outside, and they'll play with sticks, or they'll take like one toy out and they'll make a track for it and dig with it or dig in the sand, and he just films it. He's now on Amazon too. They're making tons of money. So. Yeah. He just holds the camera and walks around and follows his kid. So with technology, there's assets available to people that.
Would that be in the category of God created?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's just him being, he seems like a really creative dad. And he's a big kid that likes to play. But they just come up with things. He made a spin-off show where he just makes up an adventure for his kids. And he'll have like a treasure hunt that'll take them through the woods, and he just films the whole thing. And my kids sit there glued to it and rack up tons and tons of views for him. So the last idea I want to hit here on the idea of cash flow is I want to hit two ideas of how our money works. So the first one, I wanted to look at the parable of the talents, if you guys remember that one. So that's found in Matthew 25. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to, we're running pretty late. I should summarize these two really quick. So the parable of the talents, if you guys are probably familiar with it, the master leaves and he has 3 servants, and he leaves 5 talents with the one servant, 2 talents with the other, and 1 with the third. And he comes back, and the guy that got 5 says, "Master, look what I did. I took the 5 and I made 5 more." So he gave the master 10 talents. And the second guy, said, "Master, look what I did. I took the 2 talents and I made 2 more." So he gave him 4 talents. And then the last guy, he took his 1 talent, he buried it in the dirt, and when the master came back, he dug it up and said, "I was scared of you because you're a good businessman and a shrewd businessman, so here's your money back." And the master got upset with him, right? And he said, "You wicked servant, you should have at least taken it to the money lender so I would get my money back with interest." So there's wonderful spiritual applications to that for sure. But I think we'd be making a mistake to pass the face value of that. That God was talking about a master praising the servants for making more money, right? That's simply the face value of the parable. They were told, "Well done, good and faithful servant," for doing what? For making more money. So there's biblical ideas of us trying to use wisdom to increase money. So they were praised for using wisdom. They must have had business skills if they could double the money. They were doing pretty good if they could double the money. We're gonna get to that next. So that's the first idea, that wisdom, we need to practice wisdom with our money. Because like we looked at the start with our time, the same idea, using wisdom, we don't want our money to go down in value, right? We don't want to be the servant that just buried it, like, okay, pulled my 1 talent out again. So we need to be trying to learn and grow so we can grow in wisdom in how we manage our money, is what I take out of this. We don't necessarily have to double our money. But what I take out of this as a principle is that they were using their skills they had gained, probably watching their master, and they had developed, and they were able to multiply the money. So I do think it's important for us to be working on ourselves to develop our knowledge of money and how money works, to be able to multiply the money. 25. I think it starts verse 14 is where the parable starts. Yep. So the second idea of how money works I want to present to you is that savers are losers. This is another Robert Kiyosaki controversial phrase. He likes his controversial phrases. But savers are losers. And what he means by that and what that means is this is where we started with the gold-backed currency. And when the currency moved away from gold, inflation came in. So if you take $10, you put it in a box and you stick it in your closet and you keep it for 30 years, that $10 isn't going to buy you much. Like we were talking about, $1 in 1933 would buy what $20 would buy now. So what's a dollar buy now? In 1933, it could have bought you a meal for two. What's it buy now? Not even a candy bar anymore. A candy bar is $1.69 now. So that dollar that could have got you a dinner for two, rounding off, a dinner for two in 1933 buys you the tiniest candy bar you can find on the shelf, or the pack of gum. Isn't it gum that's 99 cents now? So is gum even more than, I don't. Yeah, I quit. I don't know. I remember when candy bars were 49 cents. So when I was young, it's like, hey, I can dig a couple quarters. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that would hurt when candy gets taxed. So, yeah, and then you got to give that extra penny to the government. Yeah. So that's what the idea of savers are losers is getting at. That it actually is in our financial system, it is an unwise idea. Other than, because we talked about the importance, so I'm not trying to contradict myself here. It is a good thing and a wise thing to have an emergency savings account for when expenses come up, you lose your job. So I'm not saying no savings at all. But when I'm saying savers are losers, if that's your long-term strategy for retirement or for whatever may come in the future, is just to put money in a savings account, try to keep making that bigger and bigger. Well, your average, I looked it up, average inflation rate, it fluctuates, but it lands somewhere around 2.5% a year. So every year, your money in buying power is 2.5% less. So if you put that $10,000 in savings, it goes down in its buying power 2.5% every year. So it is the way our system works to actually handle our money wise for long-term savings and investment. We need to be looking at something that at least beats inflation and beats it by enough of amount that it'll increase. Because otherwise we're just going backwards. So it sounds like we're calling savers a name, which we kind of are. But it's more just trying to, I think Robert, he likes the shock value of some of his phrases. So he's just kind of trying to get that initial shock value that just letting, like the guy that buried it, he missed out on bringing it to the money lenders and it could have got interest, because he just buried it in the sand. So if we do the same thing with our money, even if it be in a bank account, we stick it in a bank account that makes 1%, we're still 1.5% behind inflation. So in a way, our money is still going down. Even though when we see it, we get the statement at the end of the month, and you got 1% interest, and they show you that number. So you think it's going up. We're not. Our lines are crossing. The inflation line keeps going up, and we're just not quite making it ahead. So. We're going to talk about how to pick good investments. I'm not going to tell you what's a good investment. But yeah. Okay. We are going to talk about one of the first things we'll hit in investment is the biggest, and I did want to touch on this a little bit since we did bring up investments. One of the most important things in investments is risk management. So, and one of the best ways to manage risk is to gain education. So, that's really the best way to manage risk, is to learn more. Keep studying whatever investment you are going after. Keep studying it. So, yeah. So whether it be real estate, I'd start reading. I do a lot of reading still. I was told a long time ago, those who read succeed. So, I don't like reading for pleasure. I don't read fiction books or anything. Like, I actually kind of hate reading, but I like learning. So I'll read books to learn, and I enjoy it because I like learning new things, but I don't pick up a novel. If you like reading, excellent. My brother, he would read a book a week because he just liked to read. So, and he's quite smart with history and facts, actually, because he just read so much. He's a pretty smart guy. So, but so that's I kind of flew through a lot of stuff. We had stop for some questions. Any more questions as we kind of wrap up? Anything you disagree with me on? Which is okay. So, we kind of flew through a lot of stuff there, so. Yeah, I pulled out the whiteboard that's older than Brandon. So, thanks, whiteboard. So, but, yeah, and all of this stuff is from Robert Kiyosaki. So, I'm borrowing material. So don't think I'm super smart and came up with those illustrations. So, those are from his book. Because I like to read and learn. But, yeah, well, I'll just pray to close us. So, Father, we thank you again for the chance to meet. I just pray that as we go about our weeks, that you will give us safety. You'll give us favor as we interact with people, that we can show them the love of Jesus through our day-to-day interactions. Pray that we will learn and grow in how to wisely manage our time and our money. In Jesus' name, amen. So next week, I believe, is when Andy Hanvelt is coming in. So if you have banking questions, next week's the one to bring those in. If you want to know about how your credit score works, or he's going to talk about, I asked him to talk about mortgages, like investment banking. So if you wanted to go buy a rental property, what you would have to show to be able to obtain that mortgage. And then I want him, he's got so much knowledge about the lending in the debt world, like how to manage if we found ourselves in bad debt. So he's from CCF. So, yeah, so they do? Really? Oh, I didn't know that. That's not good. Yeah, their people should, well, they got really aggressive in getting mortgages like 5 years ago. So their people should pay their bills. So. Yeah. Yeah. That's too bad. So next week's the week to ask about if you got questions for a banker. Bring them next week, and then the following week will be investment. So thank you, everybody.